What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Turnbuckle Topics podcast. I'm your host, Pat Deneen, and this is the Raw review. Of course, going to be going over Raw top to bottom. Also, night 2 of the 2023 WWE Draft. Going to tell you what I liked, what I disliked, and all that. So let's start off with some great news that we found out at the top of the week. On Monday, we found out that Mela isn't only money, but Mela is also mommy. That's right. We found out her and husband Corey Graves are expecting their first child together in November. So congratulations to them. By the way, Monday night we also found out at the Met Gala that Serena Williams is expecting a baby too. So shout out to Serena. And some other good news we found out over the weekend that the reigning and defending Intercontinental Champion of on his way to 340 days, believe it or not, Gunther, the leader of Imperium, got married to Ginny. I know most of you know her from NXT UK. She officially retired last year. So shout out to Gunther and Ginny tying the knot. All kinds of great news. Now this is not to add some doom and gloom to the great stuff I just mentioned, but Monday was also 20 years to the day that we lost Miss Elizabeth. Now, I don't know about you guys. I grew up getting into wrestling during the golden era, late 80s, early 90s, and hell, that was Miss Elizabeth territory with Macho Man Randy Savage. Even for the short time she was not with him when he was the Macho King with sensational Sherry. Then she came out and fought for Macho Man when Sherry turned on him. So again, she was just such an integral part of wrestling, and she was just absolutely beautiful just being there ringside. So shout out to Miss Elizabeth, all kinds of fond memories involving her. So let's get to this Raw review. Let's not waste any time because I got a lot to say, simply put, and we'll get to anything I may have missed towards the end of this show, but I'll do my very best to include everything I have noted here. Now, the Raw review is what I'm about to give you guys right now. Monday Night Raw took place in Fort Worth, Texas. This is, again, night 2 of the 2023 WWE Draft. And much like the most recent episode of SmackDown, where Triple H came out to start off the show, same vibes here. Triple H came out to inform us that Brock Lesnar has negotiated his way to remain a free agent in WWE. Of course he did. There's always loopholes for certain people. It is what it is. So let's get to these. Let's get to these picks. We're going to jump right into the top of the show here. Raw's first pick is SmackDown Women's Champion Rhea Ripley. Now, that kind of makes sense because we found out on Friday night for SmackDown that the Raw Women's Champion Bianca Belair was drafted to SmackDown. So that would mean the SmackDown Women's Champion would be drafted to Raw, right? So it only makes sense. So we'll see how they go about that whole title exchange depending upon what happens at Backlash tonight. You know, it's going to be very interesting. Can Io Sky knock off Bianca Belair in this historic title reign she's got going on right now for over a year? And can Zelina Vega shock the world and defeat Rhea Ripley, who's only held that title for the better part of a month? So I know that's less likely, but we'll see. So SmackDown ended up drafting United States champion Austin Theory. Again, this makes a ton of sense. The mid-card title, we found out the last episode of SmackDown, Gunther and Imperium, Intercontinental champion, and his two buddies were moved over to Monday Night Raw, so it only made sense that Austin Theory would then, in fact, be going over to SmackDown. Next up, Raw drafts Seth freaking Rollins. Again, they got these all out of the way. We found out, again, on SmackDown that Becky Lynch was being drafted to Raw, staying on Raw, and being that they're a married couple, WWE typically keeps the couples together, especially if they're married, and depending upon your level of importance in the company. So that's that. And then we come to find out to wrap up the first round of the draft, SmackDown drafts the Queen, Charlotte Flair, who will remain on the blue brand to wrap things up there. So she's taking some time off. We haven't seen her since losing to Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania. It was noted going into Mania that not only was she going to lose, but that she would be taking some time off. What would she be doing? Is it something involving her husband Andrade? Is she doing? We saw some rumors about bodybuilding competitions and stuff like that. So who knows when she'll be back? Now, just after this, Triple H announcing the first 4 draft picks of the first round, Paul Heyman makes his way out. After that, Triple H gives him a first-hand look at the new WWE World Heavyweight Champion, the special counsel for Roman Reigns of the Bloodline, the head of the table, the tribal chief. How about a third title for Roman Reigns? Well, wouldn't that defeat the whole purpose of having a title for Raw? Come on. What are we doing here? So anyway, Heyman addresses Roman, Solo, and himself being drafted to SmackDown. He goes ahead and talks about the Usos' fate being determined on Monday night as to where they will land. Will it be Raw or will it be SmackDown with the rest of the Bloodline? He also mentions how the Usos did not get the job done on SmackDown this past week, that rematch, that WrestleMania main event rematch for those undisputed tag team championships that they lost. And again, they didn't get the job done twice in April, as I mentioned on the last episode. So when Roman Reigns does address them, it won't be pretty. He goes on to say he will address the Usos in private about that later on in the night. But 1 week from this Friday, on SmackDown, not sure where it's at, but as long as it's not in the state of Texas, Heyman goes on to say, your tribal chief will take care of all business items, including the new WWE World Heavyweight Championship. I mean, again, hopefully they're just ribbing us and messing around. I love Roman Reigns. You guys that know me know I love Roman. I got his poster right behind me here. If you're watching this on YouTube, what was it 3 out of the last 5 or 6 years? I was him for Halloween. I mean, come on. But even I got to draw the line here. I mean, that would defeat the whole purpose of this title being on Raw for him to find a way to finagle his way on the Monday Night Raw and to take this title also. So anyway, Heyman goes on to say, "Oh, come on. Wouldn't that title look relevant around the waist of your tribal chief, Roman Reigns, almost 1,000 days as champion, coming up May 27th at Night of Champions, as a matter of fact," and says he would dominate with this new title to the main event of WrestleMania, but reminds us, however, Reigns cannot compete for that title since he is not on Raw. So that's that. Now, while Heyman was in the midst of talking about the men in the Monday Night Raw locker room, calling them children and so on and so forth, just down talking them pretty bad, Seth Rollins' music hits. He makes his way out. Rollins says, "Paulie, good to see you. Why the long face? Today's got to be like Christmas to you. Reigns is on SmackDown, and I, however, have been drafted to Monday Night Raw." Says, "Roman doesn't have to run for me anymore. No more pulling strings backstage so I never get my title match again. You can use all that extra energy to make sure the bloodline doesn't go poof and explode." Now, here's a spoiler for you. At Night of Champions, I am going to win the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, says Rollins, and then the world will get to see what a real world champion looks like. Heyman takes a phone call with Roman Reigns in the corner by the turnbuckle, and Rollins has the crowd sing his theme song to interrupt him. Heyman tells Rollins, "You are pissing off your tribal chief." So he says he's going to stomp Heyman's big bald head into the canvas, goes ahead and asks the crowd, "How long do you think it will take?" And he counts down from 5, 4, 3, 2. But as he gets to 1, cues Solo Sikoa's music. He comes out and makes his way to the ring to confront Rollins. However, Heyman holds him back. Now, look, Heyman says tonight there will be a match between Seth Rollins and Solo Sikoa. We'll square that away as soon as we come back from this commercial break. Yada, yada, yada. So we're about to get to this first matchup of the night that involved women. But let me just say this. I've made it pretty clear in the last week or so on a couple of podcasts that Seth Rollins should be the one to win this WWE World Heavyweight Championship. Against who in the final, we'll have to see. But I think he's the man for it. And if he's not going to get that title opportunity against Roman Reigns in the near future, which I highly doubt, again, we still think that Cody Rhodes, of course, from Monday Night Raw, will find a way to finagle his way to Roman, whether it is Money in the Bank or so on, or something later down the line. So I don't think Seth is quite in the picture for that main title scene with Roman, unfortunately. So I would say the next best thing, seemingly, as it is, a lot of people calling it a consolation prize, which it kind of does fall in that category, that territory. Seth Rollins should be the one for this, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Now, this first matchup of the night, we had a WWE Women's Tag Team Champion match. I don't believe the titles were on the line, though. Raquel Rodriguez and Liv Morgan went up against Damage Control's Bayley and Dakota Kai. Now, from a booking standpoint, they couldn't put Io in this match, being that she's feuding with Bianca Belair for that Raw Women's Championship, although the two-time Women's Tag Team Champions in the recent past from Damage Control are Dakota and Io. So anyway, Bayley gets Liv with a folding press to secure the win for Damage Control. Again, non-title match, so no titles changed hands. And so next up, we have round 2 of the draft brought to us by WWE Hall of Famers Queen Sharmell and Booker T. So Raw went on to select the undisputed tag team champions, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Riddle me this, if you will. Being that that's, you get it, that's going to be their partner going into Backlash tonight, Matt Riddle. Anyway, look, I won't quit my day job. So look, here's my question. You got Brock Lesnar at the top of the show. Triple H went and announced that he's a free agent. He negotiated his way to free agency, so he's not Raw or SmackDown exclusive. So be it. All right, whatever. But how is Monday Night Raw strictly the home of Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn when they hold 2 sets of tag team titles? They have those Raw tag team titles, SmackDown tag team titles. So I think, given their circumstance and situation, they should be able to hop back and forth whenever they damn well please. As long as they're defending champions, what's the problem? They hold both sets of titles. They can't be staying on Raw and holding one set of titles hostage, right? That's kind of like what's going on with Roman Reigns. He's got the WWE Championship and the Universal on SmackDown, and so in fact they had to, incorporate this new heavyweight title on Raw if they're not going to defend on both. Now I do understand that KO and Sammy will at some point in time defend on SmackDown, those SmackDown tag titles, but how are they organically going to present opportunities to other tag teams? So I find that to be kind of odd, being that, a guy like Brock, even though it's expected for a guy like Brock, poor example, but there's numerous other free agents that were able to work their way to not have to be Raw or SmackDown exclusive. Omos, for example. And then you got a tag team here with titles for Raw and SmackDown. They should be able to go wherever they want, whenever they want. So I don't really get that. Obviously, we're not going to get a third set of tag titles, a third set for SmackDown, just because they hold two sets on Raw. That defeats the purpose. So anyway, I don't know, just a little silly, to say the least. There's too many scenarios here that's flawed throughout this whole draft system, this brand split, if you will. It's been like that for years, and it seems to be progressively getting worse. So that's that. Anyway, SmackDown goes ahead and selects the Usos, who will join the rest of the bloodline. So fear not, they are back with the rest of their family. And then Raw selects Finn Balor, Damian Priest, and Dominic Mysterio, the Judgment Day. And to wrap up this second round here, we have SmackDown, who selects Santos Escobar, Cruz del Toro, Joaquin Wilde, and Selena Vega. And of course, last but certainly not least, Mr. 619, Rey Mysterio, the LWO in its entirety. So that's that. We're going to a matchup here where Ricochet and Braun Strowman are going up against Alpha Academy's Chad Gable and Otis, or as Maxine Dupree would refer to him as Otis. The Maximum Male Models, by the way, they were drafted to Raw over the weekend, just in case I did not mention it on the prior podcast. I believe I did. But anyway, Ricochet hits the swanton from the shoulders of Braun Strowman onto Otis for the 1-2-3. And before you know it, it looked like we were on our way to round 3 of the draft to start off the 9 o'clock hour. HBK and Adam Pearce make their way out. HBK was about to announce the first of the third round when suddenly Brock Lesnar, the Beast Incarnate's theme music hit. Brock made his way to the ring. I mean, who's going to tell him otherwise? Realistically, Pearce did. I will give Pearce credit. Pearce did try to talk some sense into Lesnar, and I'm surprised it didn't end up in a F5 or something like that. But anyway, that didn't quite work. Lesnar coming out with this, being that he's a heel again, came out in this cowboy hat and his long black jacket, very Undertaker-esque attire that people have been poking fun at him about the last couple of weeks on social media. I'm sure none of them would say it to him in person, that's for sure. So Lesnar says, Texas, how does it feel to see the only real cowboy in this state? Pearce sends out security. Lesnar says, it's going to take a hell of a lot more than that to get me out of this ring. So Pearce goes and sends out another batch of security, another 8 or 9 guys. And it was getting ridiculous. So Cody Rhodes' music ends up hitting, of course, his opponent at Backlash tonight. A surprise attacks Lesnar from the other side of the ring. Nobody, literally came out of nowhere, but was immediately stopped by WWE security. Lesnar walks back toward the ring, but then makes his way to the locker room. And this segment wasn't good. It was not good because this was pretty much something we've seen already a couple of weeks ago. That one was actually better. They actually did get to mix it up for quite a bit. And so it was terrible. This was nothing new. It was boring. It really was. It didn't add anything to the whole story. We don't know why Brock is coming after Cody, so to speak. And other than the fact that, 3 or 4 weeks ago, after he did attack Cody, that Raw after Mania, it was said that because he had to open up night 2, I believe Brock was the first match, right, with Omos. He had to open up night 2, opposed to Cody getting the main event or something like that. And it's like, we all know Brock Lesnar, if he ain't main eventing, he's going to be the first match so he could get the hell out of there. Just like WrestleMania 35, when they weren't going to main event him when he was the Universal Champion going up against Seth Rollins, and the women were main eventing WrestleMania for the first time ever. Ronda Rousey, Charlotte Flair, and Becky Lynch. Him and Seth opened up the show. It was still daylight out at MetLife Stadium. Seth also, insult to injury, beat him for that Universal Championship. Brock said, "Good, let me get the hell out of here. Cut me my check. That's it." So that very lame storyline if that was what they were going with. So anyway. Picking back up with the draft, round 3 here, we have Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez making their way to Raw. However, they are, again, the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions, so I asked the question, if they're supposed to defend on both brands, they should not be restricted to one brand. And although they're not, I get it. They do have to be drafted, so it's not as particular as the KO Sami Zayn situation where they specifically hold titles for two brands, even though Liv and Raquel can cross over seemingly whenever they want with these general titles that go to both divisions. It gets very tricky with KO and Sammy because they hold a set of tag titles that are specifically for that brand. So anyway, not as big of a deal. They have to get drafted somewhere, I suppose. Um, anyway, Asuka, she gets drafted to SmackDown. The New Day are drafted to Raw. And the Brawling Brutes, Butch, Ridge Holland, and Sheamus are drafted to SmackDown, I believe, to round out round 3. So now we had Matt Riddle going up against Jimmy Uso. At the very start, Sami Zayn blames Jey Uso for assaulting Owens outside the ring. Sami slams a steel chair on the commentary table very loud and then throws it over to Jey, who ends up holding the chair. And KO falls to the ground. Jey Uso was banned from ringside after that. The referee thought he had hit KO, and they obviously played a trick on him. So Riddle ends up hitting Jimmy Uso with a floating bro to get the victory. It was a nice win for the original bro. It's another reason for the Tribal Chief to get on the Usos' case. They're not winning tag team matches where there's gold on the line. They're not getting it done in singles competition. So they're screwing up. No matter how you slice it, they're messing up in every which way, and that's not good for the Usos. So Jay asks Paul Heyman, they go to a segment backstage. Jay asks Heyman why his brother actually was not ringside for Jimmy's match. Where was Solo Sikoa? What's going on? And he stared Solo Sikoa up and down. Solo Sikoa wasn't even really flinching. Nothing really bothers him. More cracks in the Bloodline's foundation. That's what it boils down to. So now round 4, we have Eric Bischoff and RVD coming out. By the way, guys, if you didn't know by now, SmackDown, being a 2-hour show, had 4 rounds the other night. And Monday Night Raw had 6 rounds in total for the draft. Being a 3-hour show, of course, makes sense. That's why they got the 2 additional rounds. Anyway, round 4, Eric Bischoff, RVD came out again. We saw RVD on SmackDown for night 1 of the draft. And the first pick of the fourth round was Trish Stratus. She was drafted, which is very interesting. We know she's currently in the midst of a storyline with Becky Lynch, who we haven't seen on TV for over 3 weeks now. Becky Lynch, ever since that attack by Trish Stratus and stuff. So SmackDown selects Karrion Kross, I believe by default. Scarlett, his wife, is with him, his valet. And Raw then selects the Queen of Spades and the baddest woman on the planet, Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey, remaining a tag team. And then SmackDown selects LA Knight. That ends the 4th round. So next up, we have Miz TV. He brings out Shinsuke Nakamura, welcomes him to Monday Night Raw. Nakamura, however, doesn't answer the Miz's question if he thinks he's capable of winning the new WWE World Heavyweight Championship. Miz says he's got the credentials to get it done, but Shinsuke would be a great number 2. They should combine their brands. Miz K Nakamura says things are different on Raw than they are on SmackDown. Nakamura goes ahead and says thank you to the Miz. You have more experience. Nakamura says a phrase that I presume was in Japanese. Miz continues to repeat it over the mic and then asked, what does it stand for? Now, I believe this phrase that he said was Chisai Ki Tama, something like that. He said it over and over, this Chisai Ki Tama. And it means the guy with tiny balls. Now, you remember that's been the thing with Miz the past year or so. That numerous WWE talent has messed with the Miz and promo segments and stuff like that about him having tiny balls with the whole Logan Paul and numerous others. So anyway, Nakamura hits Miz with a Kinshasa to end this segment. Next up, we had Omos going up against a local talent. Now, I believe his name was Alanis. So according to Sean Ross Sapp, Omos' opponent, Anthony Alanis, is Adrian Alanis, who has worked AEW Dark at least 20 times over the last couple of years, usually teaming with somebody by the name of Liam Gray. He's worked NXT and 205 Live a few times as well, just to give a little backstory on that. It's the first time I ever recall seeing this guy. But anyway, as far as this match was concerned, as most would presume, it was over pretty quickly. Immediately hits him with a big boot and then nearly puts him through the mat with his sheer force. Covers him with his boot for the 1-2-3. And post-match, he kept his boot to his neck. Squash match, as expected. Omos versus Rollins this Saturday. And, I think when push comes to shove, Omos Can he beat somebody as great as Rollins? He probably shouldn't. Now, being that his size and stature, could he, from a booking standpoint? Of course, it could take one move or something, one strike from an Omos that catches Seth or anybody for that matter, the right way, or in their case, the wrong way, and that could be it. So, I'm having a real hard time. It should be an easy prediction that Seth should easily defeat Omos. Are you kidding me? And obviously be in contention going forward for this new WWE World Heavyweight Championship. But look, I'll be honest here. Omos does have a chance. I mean, not only because he's in the match, but I do think from a booking standpoint, we all know Vince loves little Omos. So, man, that would be something else. So we'll see what happens here. He squashes all this local talent all the time, but I think when push comes to shove, it's going to come down to, can Omos actually get it done against these top-notch stars? Can he get it? Obviously, he didn't get it done against Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, but can he redeem himself against Seth Rollins? That remains to be seen. So we'll see what happens later tonight. Round 5, I believe this is. Road Dogg Jesse James and Molly Holly. Now, I love the fact that within 3 days, we got to see Road Dogg twice. We saw him Friday on SmackDown, coming out with HBK to the D-Generation X theme music. And then we got to see him on Monday Night Raw, coming out to his New Age Outlaws theme song. And it's funny, because when I saw him on SmackDown Friday, there was a part of me that said, I love DX. I love their general theme song, of course, but I would not have been opposed to hearing him come out to that New Age Outlaws theme. So we got the best of both worlds. So going as far as round 5 is concerned, Raw selects Braun Strowman and Ricochet. Now, this was very interesting that they kept them as a tag team, and I'm glad they did. The last couple of months, they've been very entertaining to watch on SmackDown. Obviously, they've crossed over to Raw from time to time, too, because, I mean, when does WWE truly abide by the brand split? Whenever they feel like it, or whenever they don't want to. So anyway, we're going to see those two together for a little bit longer. And the internet was going crazy because they said, "Oh wait, Ricochet's going to Monday Night Raw. Wait a minute." His fiance, Samantha Irvin, who's an amazing ring announcer for SmackDown. They said, "What's going to happen? You can't leave her behind." I mean, first of all, on Friday night, she lost Imperium. Whenever she announces Imperium and Gunther, Ludwig Kaiser, Giovanni Vinci, all of them, she just notably does such a great job with them. So losing them to Raw, and now her fiance Ricochet, they're like, what's going on here? But fear not, we come to find out later on throughout the week that Samantha Irvin is moving over to Monday Night Raw to be the new ring announcer over there, and Mike Rome from Monday Night Raw will be moving over to SmackDown. So Samantha Irvin posted a picture of herself on Twitter and all her socials in a red dress, looking beautiful as ever, saying, "I like red. Hashtag WWE Raw." So I'm glad to see that. Again, like I said, WWE typically does keep most couples together. So I'm glad to see that happen. Now, after that, SmackDown selected Shotzi. Raw selected Bronson Reed. As Kevin Patrick said, the walking natural disaster. Now, this is the third or fourth week in a row as they refer to him as a natural disaster. I said it a couple episodes ago. I love it. Me being the big natural disasters fan back in the day, the golden era with Typhoon and Earthquake. And then SmackDown selected NXT superstars, Pretty Deadly, Elton Prince, Kit Wilson. These were the first official NXT call-ups of Monday's draft. And that be that. SmackDown lost one tag team but gained another. So, that's how that went down. And I do like Pretty Deadly. At first, just looking at them being judgmental, I guess you could say, so what the hell are these guys about? From NXT UK, didn't know much about them visibly, just at a first glance. But getting to watch them, when they were in the Performance Center for the last 5 to 7 months, even a tag title reign there, they're very talented, very good. So they're definitely going to help bolster WWE's, tag division for sure on this main roster. SmackDown definitely. So I'm looking forward to seeing them. Now look, we got the start of the 10 o'clock hour here. We have Judgment Day coming out. Rhea says Saturday at Backlash, she'll regret everything she's done to her, as she will pretzel her. Talking about Selena Vega. Hey now, this is a PG show, isn't it? Come on. So anyway, she said, I will show them why she's the most dominant champion in WWE. Finn says he has some bad news for Bad Bunny and says Damian Priest will tear him apart at Saturday's street fight, that San Juan street fight in Puerto Rico. And at Backlash, he'll receive his punishment, says Priest. So anyway, Dominic, this has been great. It's been going on for weeks now. Dominic gets the best heel heat in the business. Never mind Roman Reigns. Never mind MJF and AEW. Dominic is really, you cannot put a price on this kind of heel heat he's receiving. Dominic tried to talk numerous times, gets booed at the arena. It's fantastic. So anyway, you suck chants were coming at him left and right, prevented him from talking for quite a while. And he goes on to say he can't wait until Mommy and Priest dominate at Backlash. The crowd won't even let the man cut a promo. It's great. Love it. Says, since LWO got drafted to SmackDown, tonight will be the last night I get to embarrass my dad and his loser friends. And then they'll run away and hide on Friday nights. Now, Rey Mysterio, Santos Escobar, and Zelina Vega made their way out. Ray said, no one's hiding. We were drafted to SmackDown. That's how it works. So now we had a mixed six-person tag match. We had Rhea Ripley, Dominic Mysterio, and Damian Priest going up against Zelina Vega, Rey Mysterio, and Santos Escobar. Now, while Ray was going for a 619 on Damian Priest, after avoiding a razor's edge from him, Finn Balor takes the bullet, bump, very appropriate. It was just a decade of Bullet Club on Wednesday, May 3rd. The founder of Bullet Club, the first leader, Finn Balor, Prince Devitt. So shout out to him. If it wasn't for him, it wouldn't exist to this very day in New Japan Pro Wrestling and all throughout the world. Anyway, Ray hits the 619, and then Priest hits Ray with a South of Heaven chokeslam to get the win for Judgment Day. So that was that. Really looking forward to all that they got going on this weekend. Again, Bad Bunny and Damian Priest in that street fight. That should be a lot of fun. Zelina Vega, even though the odds are stacked against her, I'm really pulling for her. Being, she is Puerto Rican descent, being in Puerto Rico, getting a SmackDown Women's Championship opportunity against Rhea Ripley. I think it's fantastic, really. So that's good stuff. So next up, Cody Rhodes backstage goes on to say, I'm the one who has to win at Backlash, because if I don't, this whole idea of finishing the story ceased to exist. Cody also says that he refuses to go to the back of the line and will, in fact, get a win over Brock Lesnar on Saturday night. Will he slay the beast? He should. But we'll see. Bianca's backstage interview with Byron Saxton was interrupted by Damage Control. Bayley says EO will give you a reason to be blue, because she was just talking about moving over to the blue brand, SmackDown, etc. They've all been drafted to SmackDown, everybody in Damage Control as well. So she goes, when EO beats you for that Raw Women's Championship, you'll be blue. And Bianca, starting trouble with Damage Control, goes on to say, basically made EO Sky second guess her time with Damage Control. And much like Asuka has done in the past, Io cuts a promo. It was funny. It was all in Japanese, basically yelling at Bianca. So that seems to be their, their go-to situation for people that have a hard time speaking English. They said, well, let's at least make it comical. So it is what it is. Going to the sixth and final round of the night of the 2023 WWE Draft. JBL and Teddy Long make their way out. We saw them Friday night SmackDown as well. Coming out during the draft, we come to find out that Alpha Academy is, in fact, staying together and staying on Monday Night Raw. Otis and Chad Gable, shout out to them. Rick Boogs is making his way over to SmackDown. Now, this next one is huge. I really could not be happier for the two of them. On the most recent review of, night one of the draft and SmackDown and stuff, I had talked about, good for Alba Fire and Isla Dawn making their way to SmackDown, even though they are the current NXT Women's Tag Team Champions, so that kind of was a head scratcher. But anyway, even though they've only been a tag team for just a few months, meanwhile, Kaden and Katana, real life best friends. And oh, by the way, they've been tagging for the better part of 4 years. And I was thinking to myself, man, I hope they get drafted night two, because that'd be a damn shame. I think it's their time. And so in fact, they're drafted to Monday Night Raw. I couldn't be more happy for them. Now, SmackDown selects Cameron Grimes. This was another name I was hoping to see in this draft, and that is exactly what we got. Coming up from NXT. We haven't seen him in a very long time on NXT. Definitely not within the new year. He's been off television for at least 6 months, I believe. So hopefully we'll get to see him and LA Knight mix it up once again on SmackDown, like they did much like 2 years ago when Ted DiBiase was involved, when they were fighting over that $1 million championship, if you remember. That was a good time. So two great NXT call-ups to round out this round. And hey, it's main event time. Let's get into it. So we have Solo Sikoa, the Enforcer, going up against Seth Rollins. Now, the Enforcer, the street champ, whatever you want to call Solo, he is the man. I love his whole demeanor, his whole look. Everything's just perfect. Been on the main roster for barely 8 months, doing a fantastic job. Great job. So anyway, the Usos interfere. Referee calls the match. There's a DQ. And then the tag team champions KO, Sami Zayn, and Riddle come out to even the score. right when things were about to get good, 11 o'clock hits, and USA cuts the feed to put on Race to Survive Alaska. Boy, was I pissed. I said, "You've got to be kidding me. Things were just getting oosey juicy, and they went and pulled this stunt. You couldn't run over 2 or 3 minutes. I know it was a mistake, but a crucial one at that. The final Raw before Backlash. Come on, people. What are we doing here?" So that wasn't cool. USA do better. But yes, that was pretty much that. Now look, a little bone to pick as far as the women's title situation is concerned. And then I think I'll pretty much wrap up here, see if there's any news or notes that I missed throughout the midst of this podcast. Now, look, all women's titles, NXT, Raw, SmackDown, all very confusing. I touched upon it a little bit, um, on the last episode of Night One's draft, and now I'm going to go in a little further. So let's start with Raw. Bianca Belair drafted to SmackDown, and her opponent at Backlash is Io Sky. And they are fighting for the Raw Women's Championship. Mind you, both of these women have already been drafted to SmackDown. So regardless who wins, one is supposed to report this SmackDown, but they'd be winning the Raw Women's Championship. All right. So I'm sure they'll figure that out in some regard. Anyway, let's go to SmackDown. Now, Rhea is drafted to Raw. Of course, it makes sense in the scheme of working opposite of Bianca or whoever that champion will be, even though we think most of us probably don't presume that Zelina is going to defeat Rhea Ripley. Now, Zelina was drafted to SmackDown with the rest of the LWO, but Rhea Ripley drafted to Raw because the Raw Women's Champion, Bianca, was drafted to SmackDown. So it's just a total mess. It really is. I hope they come out with a good plan here. So again, this is very confusing as to why they would do that. I don't think, being that the men don't call it the Raw or the SmackDown Championship, even though they have a specific title for each brand and whatever. I think the women need to figure out a way that they, WWE as a whole needs to figure out for the women. Don't call it the Raw and the SmackDown Women's Championship then, because it seems like every year you want to draft said champion to the opposite brand, twice over, obviously, because you want a title on each brand. So I feel like, the champion at the time should not be eligible to be drafted. Look, if Bianca's on a historic reign, which she is right now, Raw Women's Champion, she should be staying on the Monday Night Raw brand. Same goes for whoever's the SmackDown Women's Champion at the time. Now it's Rhea Ripley, of course. And although she's only been champion 1 month, it's irrelevant in the sense of, regardless of how long she's had it, even though Bianca's reign currently is more historic. Look, if they're the champion for said brand, leave them alone. You could literally move every other woman around them. But why them? They are the champion of that brand for X amount of time, and let them stay there. So that's very confusing. Anyway, hopefully it's not a failed title swap like 2021 with Charlotte and Becky, even though there's not real life animosity between the two. That was a little different, but still, it was just terribly done. Anyway, women's tag title situation. Now we have Raquel Rodriguez and Liv Morgan drafted to Raw from SmackDown. Raquel at least was from SmackDown, Liv initially from Monday Night Raw. Regardless, the women have one set of tag titles for two brands, so inevitably they'll have to be on SmackDown as well. Just keep them as free agents. Realistically, if that is a choice, that is an option, why not just keep them as free agents? I think that would make a hell of a lot of sense. Now, the Women's NXT Championship, the actual champion, Indy Hartwell, who's been the champion for the better part of a month since Stand and Deliver when she won that ladder match, little help from her boy Dexter Loomis, as she calls Sexy Dexy. Anyway, the NXT Women's Champion drafted to Monday Night Raw. Literally, the champion of that brand drafted to Raw. And then, by the way, she got hurt last week or 2 weeks ago in that triple threat main event match on NXT. She's wearing a boot right now. So, what's going on here? It's very confusing. Now, I do understand that in 2014, Paige came up to Raw, the Raw after Mania, as NXT Women's Champion, the first NXT Women's Champion, by the way. Little fun fact there. And also shocked the world by defeating AJ Lee that night and holding both sets of titles, the NXT Women's Championship and the Divas Championship. So I do understand that. And then I do understand a year and change later, July of 2015, Sasha Banks was brought up. That's when she joined Team Bad with Naomi and Tamina Snuka. And she was the NXT champion for at least one more month until she lost to Bayley, who remained on NXT at, NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 1. So those two did come up holding that NXT championship for a little bit of time. Again, though, very confusing why you have all these other options to bring people up, but yet you want to continue to mess with the champions in some regard. Very much so a head scratcher, really is. Now the NXT Women's Tag Team Champions, Alba Fire, Isla Dawn, who have held these titles for a little bit over a month by now. Again, they were drafted in the first night one. They were drafted to SmackDown. Again, I think they're both incredibly talented. They could make it certainly in singles or tag. That's besides the point. Now you're drafting the NXT Women's Tag Team Champions to SmackDown, and the team they're facing on NXT Tuesday to decide who's going to be the NXT Tag Team Champions. Initially, when they were drafted on Friday, and then Kaden and Katana came up to them and challenged them for those tag titles on Tuesday, you would think, oh, for sure, they've got to be dropping to Kaden and Katana because it looks like they're not going to be drafted. But now we find out on night two of the draft that Kaden and Katana are in fact drafted to Monday Night Raw. Now you've got two tag teams. One's Raw, one's SmackDown. The current champions are on SmackDown, fighting over these NXT Tag Team Championships where neither one are going to be. So, I mean, maybe I'm missing something here. Look, I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to comprehend with the women. It's very confusing. Again, I love this for all these women that they're all being brought up to the main roster, to Raw, to SmackDown. But why are we messing with all the champions at this time? Or why not have them drop prior to? Why are you messing with Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair, said champion for each brand? And all that. So it's a very confusing situation. Anyway, again, happy for all of them. We'll have to see what happens. I mean, maybe they intend on merging, combining those women's tag team championships. There's not a hell of a lot of tag teams, really. We've only had the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships on the main roster for about 4 years now, a little over 4 years. And the ones on NXT, it's been what, 2, maybe 3 years? They came shortly thereafter. And there's not many true tag teams in any of the divisions, Raw, SmackDown, or NXT. So realistically, as they should have done from the very start, those tag titles should have bounced to all three brands. Did not need 2 sets. So if they plan on merging them, a match, obviously, if it's the current champions, Alba Fire, Isla Dawn going up against a Raquel Rodriguez and a Liv Morgan, you name the place and time, whatever, and you merge it, so be it. May the best ladies win. And then you have 1 set of champions. I think that's the way to go with that. But anyway, that was my 2 cents on that whole shtick there. Now, this was per Andrew Zarian. WWE wants to update its history books and have longer championship reigns for champions. Now, Roman Reigns holding the Universal Championship for over 1,000 days is part of the company's plan to quote-unquote modernize the title records. So this is very interesting. A lot of us, may have thought, obviously a lot of people, I didn't think this, but a lot of people thought Roman was going to lose to Cody at WrestleMania 39. Initially, when he lost, when Cody Rhodes lost, of course, I thought, okay, maybe Cody's going to get him back at SummerSlam. Now it's looking like, as of a week ago, it could be WrestleMania 40. To be completely honest with you, though, WrestleMania 40 is not even a given. I read something along the lines recently that, if Roman Reigns surpasses September of 2024, don't know the specific day, but roughly September 2024, he would then go ahead on Hulk Hogan and defeat his streak of 4+ years or whatever it is as champion. So it's getting kind of crazy. Again, it is kind of bizarre, and we're gonna have to see how that unfolds. I meant to mention this at the top of the show when I mentioned that Carmella is pregnant. Now, she's just on her way out of her first trimester, and although it is early, she was wrestling early on, at least that first month and a half, while pregnant. She had a couple of notable matches, actually. I'm looking at this right now in front of me, this graphic. She had a match against Raw Women's Champion Bianca Belair on Monday Night Raw. She also had a match against Asuka on Monday Night Raw. And then shortly thereafter, on February 18th, when they were in Montreal, she was part of that women's elimination chamber match. So Carmella was in there with Nikki Cross, Natalya, Raquel Rodriguez, Liv Morgan, and Asuka. So that was something else. Shout out to Carmella, man, doing the damn thing. So there was a few names after Raw went off air that were still available, still eligible to be drafted, and they were as follows. The remaining picks to be made after Monday Night Raw: Akira Tozawa, Baron Corbin, Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin, Dana Brooke, Elias, Emma, Johnny Gargano, Los Lotharios, that's Angel Garza, Humberto Carrillo, Nikki Cross, so Nikki Cross, Piper Niven, Riddick Moss, Tamina, Tegan Knox, and Xia Li. Now, very shortly thereafter, I believe on Raw Talk, this was made official. SmackDown got Tamina Snuka, and NXT, another NXT call-up here. We have Grayson Waller. And Monday Night Raw received the bulk of those people that I had mentioned. Johnny Gargano, Dana Brooke, Nikki Cross, again, Angel Garza and Humberto Carrillo, Xia Li, Akira Tozawa, Piper Niven, Tegan Knox, Riddick Moss, and Emma. Again, they're a couple. They kept them together. They're moving over to Raw from SmackDown. Indus Sheer and Jinder. Now, that's a big one. Veer. I know you guys remember Veer from last year. How could you forget it? So now they're bringing up him and his tag team partner, Veer and Sangha, along with Jinder Mahal, who's been aligned with them the last couple of months in NXT, coming up with them. And another NXT call-up, Odyssey Jones. Very happy for him. He was out last year, better part of a year. I believe he had a pretty bad knee injury he suffered. So that's awesome. And the free agents that remain, Brock Lesnar, Baron Corbin, Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander, Elias, and another NXT call-up, currently a free agent, Zion Quinn. So that rounded out that list. I'm pretty sure we're all caught up to snuff here. And so very interesting. Now, some notable NXT stars that will remain there that we all thought would have been brought up was another couple. Braun Breaker, Cora Jade. I thought for certain Braun Breaker was on his way up to the main roster. I would have put money on it. And also Ilya Dragunov. He's in the middle of a feud with Dijak. That's getting pretty fierce over there. And Roxanne Perez. She's also there too. So, I would say that, Cora Jade making it to the main roster would have made a lot of sense, her being with Braun Breaker or whatever, real life couple. But in all sincerity, the two names out of the four that I thought were going to be on the main roster for sure is Braun Breaker and Roxanne Perez. I thought that was definitely going to happen. But it looks like they'll be hanging out there a little bit longer too. So other notable names, the Creed brothers, another tag team that a lot of people were thinking was going to be moved to the main roster. I would have damn near put money on it as well. And because Diamond Mine's pretty much fallen by the wayside, it's just the two of them and Ivy Nile. And other than that, Tyler Bate. Tyler Bate's a good name too that a lot of people thought may have been making it to Raw or SmackDown as well. But the draft was pretty good to NXT. Very good to NXT. Some of the men and women on Raw and SmackDown have a change of scenery, so good for them, bouncing back and forth. And so we're going to see what happens. Draft was all right. I did like a lot of the moves, the JD McDonoughs, the Zoe Starks. Good for Grayson Waller. That's fantastic. Pretty deadly. Has a lot to prove. Just a few I'm thinking of off the top of my head right now. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It really is, and we'll see what happens there. So before we wrap up here, I did like that Cedric Alexander tweeted out, so free agency, huh? He says, so I can get that Wes Lee WWE North American title match. So hey, that'd be fun. If he's a free agent, why can't he go to NXT? That'd be a lot of fun. Cedric Alexander and Wes Lee, take my money. I'd go there. I'll take a flight to the WWE Performance Center in Orlando right now to watch that from the front row. Those two would definitely put on one hell of a show. That goes without saying. Again, we could see a reunion of sorts of that group from NXT The Way. Now, we do know that Austin Theory, the United States champion, was sent to SmackDown, being that Gunther and Imperium, Gunther being the Intercontinental Champion, made his way to Monday Night Raw. So, of course, Theory went over there. But anyway, the other four members of The Way are on Monday Night Raw now. We have real-life couple Johnny Gargano, Candice LeRae, and then, of course, Dexter Lumis and Indy Hartwell now being brought up from NXT to Monday Night Raw. So maybe they'll put them together. That'd be a fun faction to see. And last but certainly not least, one thing I meant to mention at the top of the show while I was mentioning all that great news involving Carmella, Gunther and his wife Ginny, even Serena Williams, pregnant as well. Pat McAfee on Thursday went on Twitter to say, this is a day that I and the missus have been dreaming of. I can't wait to see where this foot gets to go. Beautiful girl, we love you. Baby and Mama are both healthy. Mama and I are floating with joy. This is amazing. Thank you for all the good vibes. So shout out to Pat McAfee and his wife, with the birth of their daughter. That's fantastic news. I truly miss him on WWE commentary. I know I'm not the only one out there that feels that way. Wade Barrett's doing a great job with Michael Cole. I really do like Wade Barrett too. He brings a lot to the table, quite literally as well, but there's nothing like Pat McAfee, and I think we all could be in agreement for that. I know Michael Cole certainly feels that way. He reinvigorated Cole's career, that's for sure, him hopping on the scene last year with him. So he's been missing his partner in crime it's probably been since September, since College Game Day. And he's been out ever since, obviously, with this news of his wife being pregnant and all that. So we're not sure when we're going to see Pat again. We saw him at Mania briefly. But again, shout out to him and his wife on the birth of their baby girl. So I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in yet again to the Turnbuckle Topics podcast. I'm your host, Pat Deneen. This is the Raw Review, and this was night 2 of the 2023 WWE Draft. It's all done now. We'll see what happens. It should be very cut and dry, very plain and simple that the Raw side's here, the SmackDown side's here, and they should do this and they should do that. But we all know how Vince is, and you're going to tell me it's just Triple H running things, Pat. Please, don't be ridiculous. Are you kidding me? Look, there's going to be, when you start to see a lot of ridiculousness, hence an Omos and a Brock Lesnar for starters, using free agency as their excuse for hopping to said brand whenever they like, you already know what's going down. That's all Vinnie Mac, so give me a break. So hopefully they abide by the rules and they stay where they're supposed to, and that's the whole point of a brand split. And hopefully everybody gets their shine. Hopefully nobody's in catering too long, and they get out there and get opportunities, not just at titles, but legitimate matchups and doing what they get to love. Be a professional wrestler, that's what they're there for, or a sports entertainer, or what have you. So again, thank you for tuning in to the Turnbuckle Topics podcast, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening.